To the Illini Inquirer podcast. And what a night for Illinois basketball as they get their first road win at Iowa in the Brad Underwood era, 87-83. And Iowa DeSumo in his first career start. We haven't wrapped up this Bulls game yet, but they're going to beat Denver and the reigning MVP, Nikola Jokic, and Iowa in his first career start because the Bulls are shorthanded with DeRozan on the health and safety protocol. He's flirting with a triple-double right now and having a lot of fun in his hometown of Chicago. But with Joey Wagner and Derek Piper taking care of business in Iowa, I stayed back. And we're going to do the pod with Mike LaTulip, our Illini Inquirer basketball analyst, former Illini and Wright State player. And Mike, I texted you. I feel like this is the kind of win Brad Underwood love, right? Like, because you can pick it apart. Like fans and we will pick the negative things apart. They weren't able to kind of run away with this game, but they were tough. They absorbed all these blows. Iowa was given these long runs, 21-2, 10-0 at the end of this game by Keegan Murray at one point. But they come out with a victory and a tough place to get a victory. So just overall thoughts on a huge win.
Very huge win. I think there's something about starting 2-0 in conference. It hasn't been done, I don't believe, and it's been a few years maybe. I'd have to check on that. I know last year, obviously, they split with Rutgers and beat Minnesota, I believe. But you mentioned it, man, absorbing those punches. And here's the reality. Home teams are going to go on runs, multiple runs. So have you done enough work outside of those runs to prevent those runs from sinking the ship? And they did. Illinois went on runs of their own. And that's typically when you look at a team that's playing at home, the 17-2 run or 21-2 runs. And, they had that little spurt there in the second half as well, and kind of had another one at the end of the game. What have you done to offset those? And I thought they stepped in confidently to open threes. Obviously punked them on the glass. There was no question about that. And that ended up being the story of the game. 18 turnovers, but when you get 19 back on the offensive glass, it kind of, I don't want to say it zeroes it out because you still want to be able to shave that down. You're not going to get out 19 offensive rebounds every single game. But man, I mean, there was just a lot to like about, the individual performances, but just the overall resolve of the team in general and how they closed it out. I think I had mentioned towards the end of the game, just Io gone. I know we just talked about him doing his thing against the Nuggets, and Io gone. Like, there's going to be a need for this team to close out games by committee. It's just going to be the way it is. And there's benefits to having a guy like Io closing things out, but doing it by committee is pretty dangerous too, because you have a lot of different options in those moments. And there's, you've seen on display here a few times in the early going that there are guys that are not only capable of stepping up, but are willing to. And I think you saw that in the form of Alfonso Plummer, and Trent hit some big free throws. Kofi hit some massive free throws, albeit not later in the game, but that 5-minute mark, those were some huge free throws. So a lot to like about this game, but like you mentioned, a lot to learn from it too.
Can you remember the last time they were 2-0, Mike? Because you were on the team.
Let's see. That would have been Penn State and Indiana victory, I believe, in the 2013-2014 season. Yeah, it would have been Penn State in the opener with Kendrick Nunn getting in the face of DJ Newbill, getting Newbill ejected and ending his 10-plus point streak. And then I think we played New Year's Eve game against Indiana, and that was a good win to start 2-0. Yeah, man, 23. That's crazy. 7-8 years. That's wild.
Yogi Ferrell at 20 or 30 in that overtime win you guys had. Then you lost 8 straight. I didn't want to focus on that, but that was the last time. And think of the good years. I mean, the last 2 years you haven't started 2-0. And I just want to make this point, Mike. Like, there's a 5-game win streak after a disappointing 2-2 start, and you've won back-to-back Big Ten games. Like, Iowa to me looked like a middle tier Big Ten team. Rutgers to me looked like probably worse than we thought they were coming into the year. Iowa maybe a little bit better with how good Keegan Murray is playing for the most part this season, but you haven't done that in a long time. And you're doing it without Andre Curbelo, right? Like, and you missed him at times tonight with the first half and second half, but how has this team been able to do this? It feels like they're really starting to settle in and adjust everything to what this team is. And the turnovers remain a problem, Mike, but man, offensively, they are really dangerous right now.
Well, every season's different. I think that kind of ends up being the story. Every team goes through different ebbs and flows and battles to kind of morph into who they are as a team. And I think this Illinois team in particular, I mean, you look at last year, they started 9-5, and they're sitting at 7-2 right now and 2-0 in conference. And it's amazing what the narrative was like a week and a half ago, you know what I mean? And how quickly that can change. And I think what hasn't changed is just how many pieces this team has, and not only just the pieces, but how these pieces have stepped up. I mean, Jacob Grandison, you really can't say enough about him. We'll talk. I'm sure we'll talk about Alfonso Plummer and Kofi Cockburn, and obviously Trent and DeMonte have really made their contributions. Coleman Hawkins did a lot of good tonight. But man, Jacob Grandison, I know the stat sheet. He obviously has 21 points, but 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and the 3 rebounds, he probably kept 4 other ones alive, and has just been so confident. And I think there's something about tying all this back to Alfonso Plummer. And when you have a guy on your team that plays with that type of confidence, that is just kind of a wind at his back kind of guy every time he shoots it, that type of stuff's contagious, man. Since he's been hitting those shots, it really feels like offensively they've taken this to another level. And Kofi too. I know Kofi didn't have any assists tonight, but that pass he made in the first half, kind of that drift pass into the corner that Luke Goody missed the shot on. I mean, those are just growth. You see growth from a lot of these guys. I'll go back to Alfonso Plummer. I think if we trace back to the game that started this torrid start for him, it was the Kansas State game that he came off the bench at in the 9-minute mark of the first half. Like anybody else, this is what's so crazy about Alfonso Plummer. Anybody else is in that moment, the more they're not getting subbed in, right? Your confidence is dwindling, right? You think you're coming out of the rotation. You think, and for him to turn that into what he turned it into, the Kansas State game, and sustain it. I think the thing with Alfonso Plummer is you can look and say, hey, 48% in his last 5 games or whatever it is from 3, and think, okay, well, he's hot, and can he sustain it? The looks that he's getting and the type of shooter he is, that's all it is. It's high percentage looks for an elite shooter. So I think he can keep this up. It may not be the 48% rate, but shoot, it's opened up a lot of things for this Illinois offense. And I'll tie this all back in to say, there's a lot of different pieces to point to on this team. And, whatever you think the goal is going to be at the end of the year, there's not just one way to get there, and I think Illinois is showing a lot of fight with kind of a unconventional start to the season with injuries and illnesses. And they've made it work. And I think they've really started to round into form here, and they haven't even really had their preseason all league point guard.
Yeah, last 5 games, you mentioned Alfonso Plummer, 23.4 points, 23 of 48 from 3. Those first 4 games, he's averaging 6 points a game, shooting 27% from 3, but he never lost confidence, right? Like he kept shooting, Brad Underwood said, and he's found a way, and they've needed that scoring burst in the worst way. And he's perfect from free throw this year. I mean, some huge free throws down the stretch. Like when you got 3 guys who shoot 80+%, and Trent, and I know Trent missed one, but Jacob Grandison, huge free throws down the stretch. Alfonso Plummer makes all of them. And Kofi, 5 of 6, shooting over 70% this year. Just what a huge thing that could be for this team down the line. I don't know what else we can say about Kofi Cockburn, but I don't know if Iowa did all that much to stop him, but they were intent on stopping him. He only had 1 field goal attempt in the first half, but he dominated the glass even in the first half. But the second half, Illinois emphasized, get Kofi the ball, and missed his first 3 shots. So they go, oh, maybe this isn't what they need to do. But he got more aggressive and kind of hunting his own shots, Mike, and eventually just dominated the second half. 14 points, 12 rebounds just in the second half alone. Got a double-double in 1 half alone. But 18 rebounds, almost out-rebounded Iowa by himself. He's just a load, and that's why you take all the bottom half Big Ten teams, and they're at a disadvantage against Illinois just because of this one guy.
probably even more than the bottom half, to be honest. That's a
Conservative there. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's what's crazy about it. And he was just, I thought he was so patient. Guy like that who commands that much attention, who's 24 a game. If he wasn't the type of kid that he is, he probably would have been frustrated talking in at halftime about needing the ball more. But you see it all the time. Like, you can't have it both ways as a fan, right? Like, you go into halftime up 3, and the narrative is like, well, God, we haven't fed Kofi Cockburn enough. It's like, yeah, and you've been hitting threes because of it, because of the gravity. We talk about the gravity that he has, and that's going to continue to be the trend because they're not going to stop swarming him. I don't care. They're going to try to bank on you starting to miss shots, and that bodes well for this offense. But I'll make this point. Iowa went really small. And I think as a viewer, you look and say, smaller guys, how are we not getting the ball into him? But there's something, it's very counterintuitive. Very counterintuitive when you think about the fact that it ends up being harder to get it into him when he has a smaller guy on him because there's more quickness to get around. And oftentimes too with bigs, they're a little bit more reluctant to really post up a smaller guy because that's the easiest foul calls. And I'll make this point too as the defender. I used to take a lot of pride in it, like being a post defender at my size. When I would come in there, you could fight your butt off, and they're not going to call a foul. Right. But the second that a guy puts an elbow into your neck, it's going the other way. So I thought it was actually a pretty good little chess move by Iowa. But the problem is, think about fronting Kofi Cockburn. Second a shot goes up, I mean, you are screwed on the glass. So, you're either hoping, all right, well, we hope they miss a shot, but even if they do miss a shot, we got these guys in position, they got these guys in the position to get rebounds. So, he was patient, missed a couple of those bunnies early, but just stuck with it, man. I mean, missed his first free throw and then made his next 5, I believe. Or maybe he was 2 for 2 in the first half and missed his first in the second half. But the 2 that he hit with about 5.5 minutes left, 6 minutes left, you really can't say enough about him. 5 offensive rebounds, probably kept another 5 or 6 alive, tapped 5 or 6 out. I mean, he really is playing like a national player of the year. And people tend to look at statistics, but if you sit down and watch an Illinois game, my goodness, what he creates without the ball in his hands. I mean, it really is to a degree when you watch the NBA. It's like Steph. I mean, it's crazy. Like even if he doesn't have the ball, you still have to account for him. And just like the Warriors with Steph, all those guys who come to the Warriors, Otto Porter, Nemanja Bjelica, Andrew Wiggins, they shoot the highest percentages they've ever shot because they're shooting open shots. Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing for Jacob Grandison. It's the same thing for Trent Frazier, for Alfonso Plummer. I mean, Plummer's probably like, I got the greatest gig in the world. I just let it fly and I'm open most of the game because everybody's focused on Kofi Cockburn. So, I thought what was most impressive about the stretch that he had, that little 6-0 run that he was tired, man. And they were letting him play. He was getting hacked. There weren't many whistles. And he dialed it in. He focused. He knocked those shots in, from some of them weren't easy either. He had a couple guys draped on him. I mean, I could go on and on about Kofi Cockburn, but shoot, it's pretty incredible the campaign that he's putting together, and you see what he brings to this team. I mean, I believe now they're 5-1 with him. I mean, you can see why.
Yeah, he's averaging 22.8 points, 11.8 rebounds. I mean, let's just think about it. Like, this is one of the best seasons. I know it's early, but this is going to be one of the best seasons we've ever seen in a Illini uniform after two guys last year had two of the best seasons we've ever seen in a Illini uniform in Kofi and Io. Yeah, man, he just makes everything else easier for everyone else. And Alfonso Plummer shooting 43% from 3 with how many he's shooting a game? He's averaging like 9 or 10 a game in the last 5 games. Grandison shooting a torrid 48%. Let's talk about him, man. 12.5 points per game, but really with Io gone and Curbelo out, he has really stepped up and he's doing it all off the bench. And just like, Kofi, you mentioned it, like he didn't get frustrated. It didn't let him affect his game, even though he was getting hacked a little bit. He's probably used to that by now. He wasn't getting the ball, didn't let that frustrate him too much on the court. Grandison come out of the bench, didn't care. He doesn't care. He's like, I'm still going to play 30 minutes in this game. And he did. And leads the team in scoring with 21 points along with Plummer. How is he grown, Mike? I mean, this is a fifth-year guy. How has he grown?
I mean, I traced it all the way back to the Penn State game at Penn State last year. Jacob Grandison really emerged in that game and did it with his hustle, right? Did it scrapping, did it doing the little things. And I think there's something as a player that clicks when you see yourself get inserted, you see yourself, building those minutes in terms of playing time, and you ask yourself, why am I staying on the floor? And then you try to do everything that you can to continue to do those things. And I think Jacob Grandison realized that the things that he does, it's knocking down open shots, it's keeping balls alive, like I talk about, it's being in the right position defensively, it's rebounding well for his position, it's taking care of the ball. He's one of the only guys that still has single digit turnovers from the rotation guys. But I remember saying it before the season. Let's make no mistake about it. I mean, Jacob Grandison has game. I mean, I'll keep saying it. Jacob Grandison has game. I mean, he does what he can for this team, but you saw in the moments where Curbelo and Kofi and those guys were out, he can step up. He can score. He's efficient. Having a guy like that, 12 points a game, almost 13 points a game in 22 minutes is crazy, crazy efficiency. So four rebounds a game. He has really been, I feel like the X factor for this team changes from game to game almost, but common denominator tends to be Jacob Grandison, because when he's not his normal tough self, it's almost like Illinois isn't their normal tough self. So he tends to be the catalyst for a lot of those hustle plays and the little things that he does. So I've been so impressed with him, and you can just see he just keeps building and building and building. I mean, we talked about early last year. It didn't look good when he was in there. Like, he didn't look confident, and part of that, like I talked about, is a guy trying to adjust to this role that he hasn't played. And man, he is rounded into form, and has just been so efficient, man. I mean, 20 for 33 from two. It's just it's remarkable. And the shot that he hit tonight, I thought won the game for them on the baseline there with the shot clock dwindling. And I made the point when I tweeted it, but a 9-foot catch and shoot jumper with no glass is not an easy shot, but he's shooting with confidence. And I think it's really helping this Illinois team.
Yeah, 6 players really played in this game, right? Bosman's Verdonk played a lot in the first half, had 9 minutes. Goody 6 minutes. Omar Payne 1, but Grandison 30, Hawkins 24 before he followed out. Kofi 30, DeMonte 30, Plummer 33, Frazier 37. I mean, we know that bench gets dwindles a little bit when you get into games like this, but kudos to those guys for playing those heavy minutes. Trent Frazier, 18 points, like big offensive burst from him, 3 of 5 from 3. It was nice to see that, given his injuries he's had, that his shots kind of come back. 8 rebounds, a career high for him. And Jordan Bohannon was a non-factor. You pointed that out to me during the game. 4 points for Jordan Bohannon in that entire game. Only played 7 minutes or 17 minutes. I know Ewis and Perkins got going off the bench for Iowa. 5 turnovers, though, pretty rare for Trent. And let's talk about that, because turnovers continues to be a huge issue for this team. 18 turnovers tonight, 26 points for Iowa. We thought that, hey, if they take care of the ball, they should take care of business in this one. They didn't, despite it, because of the rebounds. They're able to get those possessions back, Mike. But what's the issue with this team in turnovers? Because it is their Achilles heel right now.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's design. When you face a Marquette team and then turn it over 26 times, and you face an Iowa team and turn it over 18 times, I mean, that's what those defenses are designed to do. And you have to look and see, okay, well, and I see it all the time. I mean, this is the thing that, from a player's perspective, to think that like Brad Underwood wasn't repping this, they weren't repping this in practice or doing it. It's different when you're out there, man. It just is. And I thought, compared to the Marquette game, I thought there was a lot of confusion on alignment and who should be where. And I didn't think that was as much of the case tonight. It just, sometimes you ideally don't want to cross half court and pick up the ball. That's where they can really swarm you. But sometimes when it's 24, 23 left in the shot clock and you see it's getting close to that 10 seconds, just get over half court and then figure it out. I mean, it's not always best practice, especially if you're in what they call the coffin corners. But just get over half court, and I think I had somebody tweeted me tonight that was like, how does a college player not know when he's in the backcourt for 10 seconds? It's like, you don't, it sounds crazy, but like, you don't think about that. You're so hyper focused on like where the next pass is going to be that, you should have that internal clock, but on the road, it's loud. I mean, you probably have teammates pointing, telling you to get it over, but you're so hyper focused on getting to that next pass. I think this was always going to be the question, right? If Curbelo went down, how are they going to manage? We saw Trent last year against Baylor, Trent last year against Duke. He had 5 turnovers in each of those games as well. And in those games, he wasn't even really a primary ball handler, but Duke pressed. Duke had kind of the same 2-2-1 pressure. And it's those moments, I think, and those types of schemes and defenses that can really hurt a team that doesn't have a primary ball handler, because you're typically not putting it in the hands of the ball handler that you want to have, right? Let's say you want to have in Trent's hands. Well, in order to advance it up the court, or in order to get to where you want to go, you need to get it out of Trent's hands. And then if it's out of Trent's hands, it's in somebody else's hands. It's in, Coleman Hawkins' hands, or it's in some, DeMonte had a few turnovers tonight too. So, you just gotta figure it out, man. I mean, you gotta do it by committee, like we always talk about, and then you point to the other two metrics, right? Okay, here were our turnover numbers, but what were our rebounding numbers and what were our free throw numbers? And that's what won the game, quite frankly, tonight for Illinois. Was 24 for 28 from the free throw line and out rebounding your opponent by 30. So you give yourself a chance in those games, but you're not always going to out rebound someone by 30. So you got to find ways to shore that up, and it's not going to be, you're going to go from 18 turnovers to 6 turnovers. But it's a big difference going from 18 to 12, right? Going 18 to 11. That's it.
Yeah, they had 10 against Rutgers. That was a huge improvement. I think they had 6 in the first 5 minutes. So I think they have shown improvement. But yeah, that pressure still continues to bother them. We'll see if other teams do that here moving forward. How did a 21-2 run happen, Mike? How does that happen during game? And kudos Illinois responding with a 17-5 run right after that. But how does that happen during a game?
Well, it's all a domino effect, right? And I think when my wife was doing something else during the game, and I turn over and like tell her things during the game. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. All right, whatever. She knows what I'm talking about, but you get my point. So early on in the game, Illinois was getting a lot of stops, right? And that's kind of how they got out to that 20-10 lead. And if you're getting the stops, they can't set up their 1-2-2. If they're not setting up their 1-2-2, now it's a straight man-to-man defense, and that's not where Iowa excels. So you're able to get those high percentage looks. But I thought in the moment that it was much less of getting stops. I thought I was just missing shots. So eventually that's going to, like, shots are going to start falling. Shots start falling, get in the 1-2-2, right? And then when you go back to the 1-2-2, you sink back into this kind of 2-3 matchup zone. And Stephen Bardo made the comment on the broadcast, and I was sitting there saying it to myself too. It's a 2-3 zone. So what matchup zone? So what you end up thinking is, all right, 2-3 zone, and there's a lot of standing and passing, but you have to play man offense, like even against a 2-3 matchup zone, because that's what they're trying to do, is get you stagnant like it is a 2-3 zone, and then they're just passing guys off, so you never really can break down the defense. So I thought they did a much better job of that in the second half once they got into the half court. But that's really what it ended up. I made the comment at halftime. It's like, this game's going to be won on the glass and on the defensive end, because the defense is what helps your offense, right? Like you could see the times where Iowa scored is when they typically scored again, because they got into that 1-2-2 and could force turnovers. So, that's what I love about the game of basketball. That's what's so beautiful about it, is because it's all intertwined. And when you do put all those things together and you can succeed in those ways and you can get stops, and that leads to points on your end, you can get back and set your defense, get another stop. But when that comes unhinged, it snowballs in the other direction. So, but they weather the storm multiple times. And I almost feel for Iowa fans in a way because that game script was very similar to Purdue, kind of that like fake rally in a way. And that's kind of going to be the story for Iowa most of the season is they're going to get down when they're missing shots. They're going to have to press. They're going to turn teams over, make a little bit of a comeback. And then at the end, I'm not sure they have enough pieces to really, really go out and win games. So credit Illinois for taking those punches, knocking down free throws. Yeah, I thought that was really the story of the game.
All right, Mike, huge test ahead, the premier non-conference game. And as you said, maybe 2 weeks ago after Kansas City, people were like, this Illinois team isn't as good as we thought. Well, now they have a chance to win a second straight quad one game, right, against a very, very athletic, very long Arizona team that crushed Michigan on a neutral court. Haven't really played much else on their schedule, so it's hard to get a great feel for them, but they're obviously very talented. But how is this team now feeling with these 5 straight wins, especially the huge rout at home against Rutgers, a win on the road like Iowa? How are they feeling going into this game against Arizona?
Well, I think, probably after Marquette and after Cincinnati, there's a bit of an identity crisis there. And there, you can have some doubt creep in and like, are we who we thought we were going to be? And then you just kind of shake that and you go out and you play Kansas State and you rattle off 5 straight. And it's like, oh yeah, no, we know who we are. And there's a confidence to that. And there's also a confidence to being able to sustain the runs that you sustained in this game. Because I think there's something you can tell yourself, no matter how bad it gets in a game, team goes on an 8-0 run, 9-0 run. We've been here. We've been here on the road in a tough environment at Iowa. We've done this. We've kind of stemmed the tide and we've won games. So now you're at home playing against a really, really good Arizona team that has length. I think Illinois matches up better with them than Michigan did per se, but you got to have a lot of confidence. It may be a different story. I think you have a lot of confidence even if you're going out to Tucson, but you got the home crowd behind you. It's a really, really big game. I think you win this game, you probably find yourself back in the top 25. There's a lot on the line, and I think you see Illinois now. What's really dangerous for teams is when they can kind of play that blend of hunted, right? Where it's like now we're out of the top 25, but we're still a damn good team.
This team, like, not being ranked is the best thing in the world for them. Like, they play so much better as the hunter.
Yeah, they do, and I think it almost works more in your favor here in the early going, and then you can kind of build a little bit confidence here, like they have, get into conference play, and by that point, like I said, you look at the conference schedule. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but the way that this conference schedule lies, I mean, there's a really good chance that going into that Michigan game on January 14th, that you're 5-0 in conference. This team is capable of doing that, but you have a pretty tall task here on Saturday. They should have all the confidence in the world. They really should. And I expect them to continue to do what they're doing, playing within themselves. Whenever Andre Curbelo comes back, you're going to have to find ways to really make that work. But man, the confidence that they're playing with right now, it's turning some heads. That's for sure. For all the Illinois detractors that were out there 2 weeks ago, I think these past couple of weeks have been like, oh, okay, they may be back.
Yeah, they look like a top 3 or 4 team in the Big Ten, like we thought they would be. Right? Like, and I would probably put them 2 right now, just based on Kofi and all these shooters around him. I mean, they're shooting 41% from 3. On 130 attempts the last 5 games. It's just ridiculous. I was just looking at this, Mike, going through the schedules. This is probably the biggest home non-conference game in 10 years. Like, Gonzaga came to town. Yeah. And I think they were a ranked team with Ronnie Turiaf and some of those guys. Sacre, I believe, was on that team.
It was like early Kevin Pangos, and that was the year. That was the year before I got there.
Yeah.
Because then we played at Gonzaga the next year. Yeah, no, this is a big game. Really big game. I'm sure Arizona, at the same time is like, hey, this is a really good chance for us to try to go in and beat a good team on the road. So, man, for a 4 p.m. on a Saturday in like early December, I mean, you can't really get much better than a game like that, man.
Yeah. How do you feel about their chances? I mean, KenPom has them as a favorite right now. I mean, home is a big part of that, but this is the number 12 and 13 teams in the KenPom ratings right now.
I mean, I like their chances. I'll tell you this, man. I mean, it's hard to not like your chances when you have somebody on your team that is pretty much virtually a mismatch for everybody in the country. Because it's not only just about him going out there, and it'd be a completely different story if you were relying on Kofi Cockburn scoring 30,
Yeah.
30 and 16 every single game. But we've seen that, the way that, like we say, the attention that he creates and what that means for these really, really, really potent scorers and shooters, it's crazy. I mean, I go and look at Alfonso Plummer, who's shooting 43% from three. If my math serves me correct, I think he's 15 of 26 from two, which is, it speaks to his kind of three-level ability to score at all three levels. That's really impressive for a guy that's kind of labeled as just kind of a three-point marksman. He can do so much more than that. I don't know. Like, I think he can continue. He's not going to score 24 a game this year, like 20, 23 game, whatever he's at the last 5 games. But I really do believe like 15, 16, 17, like that's not out of the question for Alfonso Plummer, just with the types of looks that he gets and how efficiently he shoots it. So I think this team has a really good chance. It's like when other guys are down and not playing, this is why you have really good players, right? Because when someone's having an off night, someone else is on. Like these 3 guys are on. Then when one of the 3 that were on, one of them is off night, then it's another 3. And Coleman Hawkins scoring the ball, his average has kind of dwindled, over the last few games. And Trent struggled to shoot the ball, but like while Trent was struggling, Plummer was on his torrid stretch, and Jacob Grandison. So it's just, I don't know, man. The more that you really look at this Illinois team, and it wasn't a surprise to us preseason, but taking a step back and then now seeing it for what it is with the shooting that this is offensively and defensively when they sit down and guard. This is it's a dangerous team, man.
It's the one team that I feel like can threaten Purdue, because a lot of the things you're saying about Illinois, Purdue might be even just a little bit better. They might be a little bit deeper, a bunch of firepower on the outside, so many dominant. They got a couple of dominant players on the inside. Don't have a Jaden Ivey on this team, but we know Plummer and Grandison now can go off for a bunch of points. We know Trent can do that at some point. So you're right. If one guy has a bad game, it's not the end of you, which a lot of Big Ten teams can't. Like they have to rely on 2 or 3 guys to be good every night to pick up those wins. I want to ask you one more. We have no idea when he's going to come back, Mike, but when Andre Curbelo comes back, how does that happen? Like, what do you think it looks like when he comes back, and what does that add to an Illinois team that's playing pretty well right now?
Well, first things first, I think the first thing people are asking themselves is like, well, who comes off the bench now? It's Andre Curbelo.
I think so too. Yeah.
He's going to come off the bench. And quite honestly, he excelled in that role last year. So, does that stay that way the entire season? Who knows? But right now, the way that this team is rolling, and Andre Curbelo will probably be the first to tell you, like, hey, that's a perfect way to kind of ease him into it. He was a great change. We talked about that change of pace last year, right? You had that initial first 5, and then Curbelo came in and just kind of completely changed the pace of the game. So whenever that is, who knows? But I'll say this, man, it is not one of those things where it's like, oh, now we got to try to insert him back in, and is Illinois going to take a step back? I don't think so, because I'll make this point. The Andre Curbelo that you saw the first 4 games of the season, I think in his mind, he thought that he really needed to score a lot. This team needs him to score so much in order for them to win games. And if any of these last 4 games that he's been out, there's anything that's taught him, is that, oh, no, we got the dudes. He doesn't have to do that. And that should be somewhat of a relief for him. And just kind of really being able to pick his spots and just be Andre Curbelo. Because you could see he pressed a lot trying to prove himself in that area, when in reality, he's probably sitting there like, man, we got some dude. Like, we really have some dudes, some guys that can score. It's not just, hey, it's Kofi. Because I think initially we were maybe like, hey, Kofi, Curbelo, Frazier are like your guys that could maybe score 20 plus on a given night. Now it's like those 3, and it's Plummer, and it's Grandison, and it's Coleman Hawkins is capable of turning in a 20-point performance. So on that end, man, I mean, it's got to be just a nice perspective for him to have, and then he can, like I said, really ease himself, back into the flow of things. And when he is ready to come back, this team and his fan base, I'm sure Shirley will welcome him back with open arms.
It was incredibly well put. Like, I agree with all of that. I think it is a relief. I think it is probably good for him to see this, to see that, hey, I don't have to be All-American guard Andre Curbelo to be good, and to have this team be good. So agreed with all that, Mike.
Well, I'll make this last point too. He also can't, and this is what you worry about at times with players is, he can't be sitting there thinking that they're excelling because he's out, right? And when he comes back, let's say they drop a game, like, he can't think that it's because of him. And I know he probably doesn't think that, but it's going to be imperative for, his teammates and himself to just keep that confidence of, like, I know who I am. I know what got me to in the position that he was in last year at the end of the season, and then all the accolades preseason this year. Just trusting who he is. And who he is a really, really good player that can be an all-league guy. We always talk about the sky being the limit for him, and he's going to come back, and he's going to tear it up, man. That's what he does. So I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, and he could probably look at Kofi if he's worried about NBA draft stock and just say, Kofi had 13 points against Rutgers, 17 against Iowa, which isn't crazy for him. And he's helped his stock the last two games. Like, the way he's passing the ball, the way he's rebounding, like, he doesn't have to go for 25 and 12 every night. And Andre doesn't need 20 points and 10 assists every game to improve his draft stock.
Let me make this point, because I think I've been wanting to make this point. And part of me, like, I'm going to find the avenue to make the point. All right. Some point on a podcast or on Twitter or whatever. But let me say this right now.
You have me at the edge of my seat now with this buildup, Mike.
People, like, this is what people have to understand. And sometimes this is what players have to understand about NBA draft stock. Okay. For some reason, players have it in their mind that, like, the more they score, the numbers. Golden State has Steph Curry. Phoenix has Devin Booker. Like, if you are going to, unless you're a top 10 lottery pick, if you are going to make your way into the NBA, you have to do something that a team will say, we need that, right? Like, we need that. You can go back and look at any player that led the NCAA in scoring, maybe before Luka Garza. I mean, even Luka Garza's, down in the G League, up, he's kind of going back and forth. But any player that's led the country in scoring most times hasn't been playing in the NBA. Like, it's just, you look at fit, right? Pat Connaughton, right? Guys where you look at Notre Dame, like, yeah, he's good, played on an Elite Eight team, solid player, but, starting and playing big minutes for a team that won the NBA title last year. It's just fit. And that's why I look at a guy like Coleman Hawkins. It's like, hey, man, you don't have to be 17-8 for a team to be like, hey, we like that. What they're going to like is your versatility, right? On the defensive end, stepping out, pick and pop. Like, if you show, hey, I'm a reliable pick and pop guy, and I can guard multiple positions, good. You already have all the other attributes. So just show that you can be somebody that can be on a court in the NBA, and it's beyond all the scoring, because there is a Damian Lillard, right? There is a Joel Embiid. Like, the scoring is taken care of on most NBA teams. You look at Ayo Dosunmu, right? His role has not been the 21 a game that he scored in college. It just hasn't. He's done it in other ways, being incredible defensively, being electric, fast break, igniting the fast break. I mean, you go on down the list, being reliable, taking care of the ball. I mean, that's what these teams want to see. And I think guys that have those tools, Curbelo has the tools, Hawkins has the tools, Coburn has the tools, do those things that these NBA teams value and that can actually get you real NBA minutes. I mean, I think it's always something I'm like, man, because I had teammates at Wright State too who are like, oh man, like, my numbers, I'm not going to go to the league. And I'm like, they don't need you to score. I get worked up about it, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, you really just have to be who you are and be really damn good at it.
Yeah. Like they know Jaden Ivey can score, right? I think for him is just do the rest of things really well this year, and maybe you can rise even a little bit more. Mike LaTulip, you're the goods, man. Thanks for doing the post game podcast, and we'll talk to you later in the week for our film review. Can't wait, man.
Sounds good, man. See ya.